the concentric circles of consistency, the reddish hue of disappointment. As FM players, we are all familiar with this dreaded icon, which is why it pains me so much to find it on my own profile. That is to say, welcome to the Moneyball Clinic, where once again, I'll be doing things a little differently. We're off to Rio de Janeiro, home of the Bossa Nova, Cristo Redentor, and Tottenham Hotspur legend Gilberto da Silva Mayo. It is also home to Fluminense, who had football hipsters positively frothing with excitement last winter as they won the Copa Libertadores under the auspices of Fernando Diniz and his brand of relationism football. Doesn't sound like much of a challenge, does it? Well, despite their success on the continental stage, Fluminense finished 8th in the Brazilian Serie A and have opened this season with only one win in 6 games. Their Rio State Championship defence was, at best, limp, falling at the semi-finals to eventual champions Flamengo. Fernando Diniz had been appointed as Brazil's interim head coach and sacked less than halfway through his tenure. It was a similar story in FM. Across 10 simulations, Fluminense finished 8th on average and no higher than 4th. But this will be the last time we reference those simulations. You see, Brazil and Argentina's top divisions are the only South American leagues to feature in the top 30. And so I started up a new save with all South American leagues, starting at the beginning of 2023 and holidayed until the end of the season. This will be the dataset used, where Fluminense finished 10th, scoring 69,
nice,
and conceding 71. Now the original plan was to use this save for the actual test too. However, my PC is a little shit, and despite holidaying between games and using instant result, it was still painfully slow. Subsequently, the actual test will be done in yet another save, starting at the beginning of the 24 season. So without further ado, let's look at the squad. The player list on the right is from the 2024 save. The profiles that will appear on the left will be the data from the 2023 simulation. Fabio is a 43-year-old keeper who conceded 81 goals across all competitions. There isn't much good that can be said about that at all. He is a model citizen though, so yay? Felipe Alves is a new arrival who was Sao Paulo's backup last season, playing a grand total of 90 minutes. Even less we can say about that. In defence, we have David Brath, a slow 36-year-old who was safe on the ball, aggressive in the air, and won 89% of his ground duels. Manuel, a drug cheat who is serving a global ban until February 2024. Antonio Carlos, who has arrived from Orlando City. MLS wasn't an active league in this simulation, so the stats are unfortunately incomplete, but he otherwise looks solid. Marlon, who was on loan from Shakhtar until July, and was the most progressive of our centre-backs. Guga, who looks like he makes a narco-communist video essays on YouTube. Good in build-up, okay in the final third, and downright useless in defence. Felipe Melo is the first of the recognisable veterans. He split time between centre-back and defensive mid, where he was serviceable despite being 40. Thiago Santos played only 186 minutes, and so nothing of value can be ascertained from his stats. Lucas Caligari was on loan at LA Galaxy, so once again, his stats are incomplete. He's also injured for 6 months. Marcelo, legend. Despite having the physical proficiency of a toddler, he was still able to contribute for the team he started his career with. Samuel Xavier's greatest attribute appears to be the ability to pick up bookings. Similar to Guga, but worse. Diogo Barbosa was even worse yet. At least he's not getting yellow cards, I suppose. Finally, some youth. Alexander is a 20-year-old defensive midfielder who proved to be quite creative from deep positions. Defensive output isn't great. Gabriel Perez is a new signing. On loan at Botafogo last season, he was rubbish, but he can carry the ball, so maybe that's something. Somehow, Andre is still at Fluminense, and that can only be a good thing. 16 assists from the pivot is not too shabby at all. Martinelli was actually slightly more creative on a per 90 basis, whilst also being more active in winning back possession. Between him, Andre and Alexander, we seem pretty set. Renato Augusto arrived from Corinthians, where we didn't really play enough to make a judgment. Lima was pretty decent in relief, got involved in build-up, impacted play in the final third. Not sure if he's anything more than a squad player. The legend still has it. Ganzo had 24 goal contributions from the AM position, and more impressively, played over 4,000 minutes. Douglas Costa was another playing in the MLS last season. Fluminense really likes signing these declining superstars. Keno was the team's top scorer, having his career best season aged 34. Beyond goals, he was impressive in the pressing game too. Despite 21 goal contributions, Jean Arias was a little disappointing. More involved in build-up than in the final third, despite playing across the attacking midfield line. John Kennedy looks to be an exciting young prospect, who outscored his XG, but I am concerned at how low his XG is, considering the number of shots taken. Yoni Gonzalez has a great name, but didn't play enough minutes to pass judgment. David Terrans is a new arrival from Pachuca, where he split time between the wing and up front. Secure on the ball, he comes into a crowded front line. Lele was on loan at Fluminense last season, and 7 goals is a pretty good return from limited minutes. Too few minutes to draw any other conclusions though. German Cano, or Das Canu, is a 5'9" striker who likes to play with his back to goal. That will explain the relatively low number of shots, but when he does get chances, he is converting them. To call this squad old would be an understatement. If we turned up to a Masters football tournament, no one would bat an eyelid. Now, there isn't necessarily anything wrong with a bit of experience, but we do need to get younger. We also need to improve on a defence who shipped 81 goals in all competitions. Now, that is easier said than done. The following players have all arrived within the last 6 months. Of those remaining, most of them draw no interest from other teams, leaving us with just a small handful we can move on. Which we did. David Brath, Manuel, Thiago Santos and Keno have all departed for pastures new. Quick note, I like to change the format to the currency of the country I'm managing in, which in this case is the Brazilian real. The conversion rate in game is approximately 6 real to £1 or 5.5 real to €1. Before we can bring in reinforcements, we need to work out what we're going to do tactically. Under Diniz, Fluminense played in a system referred to as relationism. Considered by some as the antithesis of positional football, relationism prioritised getting players into close proximity to enable fast interchanges and overloads. There are a few key principles. Relationism is pass and move football. Once you make a pass, it is imperative that you carry on that momentum. Using diagonal structures in possession and utilising a healthy mix of 1-2s and dummies to create opportunities, it is fast-paced and exciting. There is a heavy emphasis on overloading a specific side of the pitch, otherwise known as tilting, an extreme form of focusing play down one flank. Now, I've gone through this quite lightly because we will not be using a relationist system, but we need to know these things for why that may be. If you're interested in learning more about it within an FM context, there's a link to RDF's fantastic video and tactic from FM23 appearing in the corner about now, as well as his FM24 one with Malmo in the description below. So why are we not using this approach? The most obvious reason is that Fluminense underperforms in FM and we're looking to improve their fortunes. Beyond that though, there are other considerations. Only David Terrans has the plays 1-2 trait, and this is something I would want to see on a significant number of players to get that fluid interplay. I also want to concentrate on simple tactics. These are not fully refined, finished tactics, but rather a base to show how you can create a system around your players that will be serviceable to build upon This also means every tactic uses a default formation that the game provides. I do not believe I could create a relationism tactic that wouldn't be complex or asymmetrical. Now, we do have players with technical quality and should be looking to dominate possession, and I believe we will be best served doing so out of a positive 4-3-3. On the right, our fullbacks weren't particularly impressive in attacking output, so we'll invert and have a winger to provide the width. On the left, our fullbacks were better in this regard, so they'll provide the width, allowing the left winger to be the secondary striker. I want our striker to both link play and be a box presence. Based on the players at our disposal, I feel a deep lying forward would be more appropriate than a complete forward. Then, to get the fifth player in left front line, we'll give our winger side central midfielder an attack duty. In midfield, we have the inverted right wing back covering that space. A defensive midfielder can help protect centrally, and then we'll use a carrilero to cover the space that the attacking fullback will vacate, creating a 2-3-5 formation in possession. 3 instructions: shorter passing, play out of defence, and run at defence. The latter because we seem to have some dribbly boys in our ranks. In transition, we'll counter-press. I say this every episode, it's the best time to win back the ball, and we have bodies forward. The goalkeeper will distribute to the defenders, because we want to play out of defence. Out of possession, we want compactness. For me, this involves decreasing the gap between the line of engagement and defensive line by 1 notch. The actual decision as to where that will be on the pitch overall will depend on who we can sign. If our defenders are slow, we'll employ a low block with standard defensive line. If our defenders are quick, we'll employ a high press with a very high defensive line. Otherwise, it'll be somewhere in the middle. We will encourage pressing a little more though. In terms of individual instructions, I want my fullbacks and midfielders tackling harder. This encourages us to be a little more willing to engage in ground rules, something I find necessary as players can often be a little passive. We'll also ask the inside forward to sit narrower to create space for the marauding fullback. And that's it. Or not. I want a playmaker in the side, but who that playmaker will be might change depending on who's available. The initial plan would be to have Ganso or Renato Augusto fulfill that duty from central midfield as an advanced playmaker. But I expect there will be numerous games over the course of the season when neither is available. In that situation, I might want to have Arias or Terence performing that role, but from a different position. And for this, I consider a trequartista as the sole striker with hold-up ball instruction. So 2 formations: the Fluminense floater 10, when the playmaker is the attacking midfielder, and the Fluminense floater 9 for when the playmaker is the striker. With that all in mind, our squad planner looks a little like this, with a certain amount of flexibility between positions. Alexander is probably going to start at left back, but if Andre or Martinelli aren't available, he'd end up in midfield. Players like Arias and Terence might play anywhere across the front line. We do still have needs defensively. Ideally, I want a left-footed centre-back, and then another as cover, and a right-footed centre-back who could be used as cover for right-back until Caligari is back from injury, and then as cover centrally for when Marlon's loan ends. That means we're essentially looking for one position, but as this was a defence leakier than Old Trafford's roof, I don't really want to be using any of the incumbent defenders as the comparison point. So let's look at the league's highest rated defenders, in particular Flamengo's Leo Pereira. Whilst he was the 13th overall in Serie A, he also performed well in the Copa Libertadores and is close to the profile of defender I am looking for. Solid defensively, winning 75% of his ground duels and 70% of his aerial duels, whilst being progressive with the ball. He would also cost potentially 82 million real. So if we can find someone with similar output but for considerably less, then we should be onto a winner. I have exported all players in South America's playable leagues into a spreadsheet and adjusted for possession. I know that a lot of people have been asking about this process and how to do it. I will be releasing a separate video on that. Be warned, it's long and it's boring. What we need to know here is that we're looking for players with comparable output in the following metrics: tackle win rate, header win rate, possession won, possession lost, progressive passes, and combined defensive actions. That's blocks, clearances, interceptions and tackles added together. There were two standout candidates: Cearás David Ricardo and Corinthians Raul Gustavo. There was not much between them. When adjusted for possession, David Ricardo is better at combined defensive actions and tackling. Raul Gustavo is better in the air and safer in possession. Neither are particularly progressive, but both have the attributes to potentially contribute in that manner. Raul Gustavo is 4 years David Ricardo's senior, and his experiences in Serie A compared to Serie B. David Ricardo might develop into the better player in the long term, but potential is just promises yet to be fulfilled. With their clubs each demanding at the top end of the valuation, Raul Gustavo is the cheaper option. 9 million real, or roughly £1.5 million, and he becomes our marquee signing. For context, Fluminense's record signing is Thiago Neves for roughly 22 million real in 2012. Raul Gustavo would be their 15th most expensive signing of all time. Not cheap, but by no means expensive. We need a backup here too, and unfortunately there are not many cheap, left-footed Brazilian centre-backs who are both available and up to the required standard. One consideration is the diversity, or lack thereof, within the squad. We have 4 foreign players: 2 Colombians, 1 Uruguayan, 1 Argentine. And so these will be the nationalities we prioritise when looking beyond our borders. Let me introduce Justin Medranda and Jean-Paul Torres, both 22, both Colombian, and both with the letter H in the wrong position. It's a similar comparison to that between David Ricardo and Raul Gustavo. Medranda is better in the tackle and combined defensive actions. Torres is better in the possession metrics. We want to play possession football, and so it's the latter that wins out. Torres arrives for 1.8 million real, or roughly £300,000. We are also looking for a hybrid right-back centre-back, and for this we will compare against Grêmio's Gustavo Martins, a strong aerial presence who was progressive both through passing and carrying. Once more, 2 candidates: International's Igor Gomes and Vitoria's Jan Soto. Once more, it's a clash between players at different levels, with Igor Gomes playing in Serie A and Jan Soto in Serie B. Soto clears in terms of win rates. 91% of tackles and 77% of headers is seriously impressive. Gomes is better in defensive actions and progressive passes, but his 60% tackle win rate is concerning. A common theme in our decision making has been focusing on what we do in possession, as we intend to dominate the ball, and I feel more comfortable with Igor Gomes covering that inverted wing-back role. 3.75 million reals, or a shade over £600,000. That's 3 players for 14 million. All 3 have decent pace, but none are explosive, so we'll stick to our mid-block and higher defensive line. From here on, I've handed the keys to the AI. All responsibilities are delegated to the staff. We'll be holidaying between games, selecting the lineup and tactic, then using instant result. So there's just one thing left to do. Play the damn game. Relationism is dead. Long live positional football. Let's start with the highlights. We won 4 out of 5 competitions. 4 out of 6. The FIFA Club World Championship was technically last season, where we lost the final to an 86th minute Benzema goal. Next up was the Rio State Championship. This was a confusing competition that I'm not smart enough to explain, so I roped in a friend.
So when Musterman came to me and mentioned that he was doing a video on Fluminense, I had to laugh to a certain extent because I figured at one point or another he was going to have to touch on the Campeonato Carioca. And as all of us Brazilians know, trying to explain that state competition is the equivalent of trying to explain advanced calculus to a 5-year-old. Unless you're like a prodigy, you're just not going to understand that off the jump. So let's just do an abridged version of events on how it currently works. You have 12 teams across the first tier of it. They each play each other once, 11 games in total. The winner of the group between those 12 teams goes to a semifinal round, and they win what's called the Taça Guanabara, which used to be one of the big titles in the state competitions based on a old federal district before the capital got moved from Rio to Brasilia. Point is, 1 through 4, those teams move to the semifinals of the Campeonato Carioca, but they also have kind of like a petty competition between 5th and 8th places, where those teams go into a separate semifinal for the Taça Rio, which used to be a big deal. It's not so much anymore, but the winner of that 5th through 8th place semifinals situation, they do end up getting kind of a pity trophy in the process. Anyway, both of those semifinals are like 2 legs, so an away leg and a home leg for each team. The winners of those go into a final. The 5th or 8th place winners get the Taça Rio. The 1st through 4th place winner portion, they end up winning the Campeonato Carioca. And that's how this format has been for the past 4 or so years. It used to be a lot more complicated somehow. Anyways, back to you, Musterman.
Thank you, dude. If you haven't seen it already, Brazilian Fury released a fantastic video covering the intricacies of the various state championships that is well worth a watch. Go check that link appearing in the top corner, otherwise it is down in the description. One thing is clear, this is an important competition, not a pre-season kick-around, and I treated it as such, retaining the championship by defeating Vasco da Gama in a 2-legged final where both teams played in white. I'm glad I didn't have to watch that. At quick glance, Serie A looked like we won at a canter, but it certainly didn't feel that way. By the time we started our campaign, some teams had already played 4 games, and we were always playing catch-up. 9 of our opening 15 games were at home though, and this helped give us some momentum. A mid-season wobble, which coincided with Andre and Alexander heading off for the Olympics, was softened by a competitive league where everyone was taking points off each other. In the end, our success owes as much to no other team being able to separate from the pack, rather than us being particularly exceptional. We were good on the ball. We created a lot of chances. We were fouled a lot. We were stingy in defence. We won our tackles. We conceded very little from set pieces. We rounded off the season with a successful defence of the Copa Libertadores. A scrappy goal was enough to give us the win over Junior FC, a team who had beaten us in the opening game of the campaign. John Arias was the star. 52 goal contributions in 67 appearances is pretty damn impressive, coming from everywhere across the front line. Alexander was a revelation at left back, so much so that I rarely wanted him to fill in midfield when Andre or Martinelli were unavailable. Andre, on the other hand, was a disappointment. Not necessarily suited to the defensive midfield role, his most notable achievement was 3 red cards. But these aren't the players we're interested in. How did the new boys get on? Jean-Paul Torres played the least, as expected. Fewer minutes than I'd be comfortable making a judgment on, but he was more than serviceable in relief, winning 92% of his tackles and being an effective ball carrier. Igor Gomez was great, playing 75% of his games at right back and proving to be very effective at progressing the ball safely. Towards the end of the season, he displaced Antonio Carlos at centre back, and with him on the pitch, we won 84% of our games. Raul Gustavo was exactly what we wanted. A player like Leo Pereira, and we got someone who was slightly better at winning tackles, slightly safer on the ball. His value has quadrupled, and perhaps more importantly, he was named Serie A Central Defender of the Year. Before I go, a side note. By using Instant Result, I didn't actively play a single fixture. Nonetheless, a 77-game season was exhausting. every single player has my unwavering sympathy. See you next time.